Welcome to Outdrive, folks. I'm your host, Cliff Callis, and each week I'm bringing you actionable marketing insights you can apply to reach, connect with, and convert rural American consumers. Outdrive is powered by Callis, a full-service advertising agency with a focus on marketing rural America. Callis offers a wide range of integrated marketing services, including website development, search engine marketing, social media, video, and digital. We develop strategic and creative campaigns to build your brand and your business, and you can learn more about us at ecallis.com. Now join me in the front seat as we head out on the road to success. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome to Outdrive. We've got another great story to share with you today about life and work in rural America and around the world. Today's guest lives in London and is recording our podcast from her grandparents' home in the countryside of the United Kingdom. Lilly Garrett is a marketing strategist who focuses on helping startup companies get up and running, and many of her clients are located in the United States. But in different parts of the world, marketing is different, yet in many respects, it's the same. And the same goes for marketing from one industry to another and from one business to another business. While there are similarities, there are also differences. The bottom line is that marketing is fundamentally always the same, using information and research to understand a situation, focusing on business objectives to identify the KPIs that will drive results, and using strategy to define the path to success. Stay with us today as Lilly and I talk about some of the hot marketing trends she's seeing and utilizing, some of the marketing technologies she employs in her role working with clients, the different types of content that are engaging audiences, and her advice to entrepreneurs who are just getting started. Welcome to Outdrive, Lilly.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you so much for having me.
I've been excited to visit with you and get to know you a little bit. You know, I have a wide variety of different types of guests on our podcast, but I always enjoy the ones where I get to kind of talk shop with another agency owner. So I'm excited about that, and especially one from outside the U.S. I know you're in UK and the United Kingdom, so I'm interested to hear your perspectives on marketing from more of a global view. I think the idea of a fractional CMO or a fractional marketing person makes a lot of sense. I think it's a newer concept to the U.S., and I see it catching on. I see how it has a lot of value. You know, I know you focus on startups, so I want to hear your thoughts on, how to get a startup up and running, because I know there's challenges to that. And then again, just your more global view of marketing trends and what you see going on in the industry today. Before we get into all of that, because I know we have a lot to talk about, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi, audience. I'm Lilly, and my journey in marketing started as a young entrepreneur, slightly clueless and naive, but with a lot of energy and fire in my belly. And yeah, through a baptism of fire, I kind of learned the ropes from, trial and error and making all the mistakes, but also making some good bets. And from having my first business when I was 19 up until now, I've always pretty much worked with startups. I've been the first marketing hire at multiple early stage startups. I've worked in tech, I've worked in e-commerce, I've worked in art, I've worked in fashion. So industry agnostic, but the through line is those early stages, is getting a company from 0 to 10, Sometimes I work with companies that don't even have a product yet. Sometimes they haven't even had one customer. And for me, that's the most exciting part of my job, is taking a founder's vision and producing something that is marketable from that. That's a little synopsis of me.
That's quite a talent that you have to be able to do that, because not everybody can. So, it is a little unique, at least in the United States, for a person to launch their own business at the age of 19. Is the entrepreneurial spirit something that you grew up with?
Yes, my dad was an entrepreneur. He was in sales and he owned a couple of his own companies. And also he was always instilling us with a lot of work ethic, a lot of what he would call kind of life hacks. And I think that gave me the kind of blind confidence that I think you have a little bit at 19 years old anyway, but it was definitely bolstered by my dad's advice. it was definitely not something that my friends were doing. I think all my friends were at university and going through that, and I decided to kind of go in this different direction. But yeah, I'm very grateful that I did, because it gave me, I think, a great set of skills really early on that were very practical instead of being, rooted in academia. Like a lot of my friends, for instance, studied business at school. And I think most of them who have come out of those degrees have said that not a lot of it was really useful in reality, whereas I only got the useful stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm very grateful that I took that path.
What is it about marketing that you have to love it because you do it all day, every day, right? But what is it about marketing that first grabbed your attention, do you think?
I think, like, as I mentioned earlier, being able to communicate a vision that you have to a group of people and communicate it so well that they want to be involved in whatever you're doing, whether that's buying your product, joining your community, even something as simple as like subscribing to your email list. I think it makes me feel like, at least when I had my own company, it made me feel kind of seen in this really special way. Like you're creating this audience of people who are actually invested monetarily or even just attention wise in what you're doing. And I think that's very validating. I find that really exciting to do for other people as well, especially when you're working with, for instance, complex technical concepts, whether, the times I've worked in cybersecurity or AI, and translating something that seems so difficult for even me to understand at the beginning, but then at the end of that coming out with kind of this story that people really buy into and align with. And I think that process is just very rewarding.
I agree with that 100%. Looking back over my career, the opportunity to get to know business people and get in their mind and understand what their vision is and where they're going with their business, and then to learn the different kinds of businesses. And then from a marketing perspective, to look at distribution and pricing and the product development, and then the fun stuff, the promotional stuff. That has been very gratifying as I look back upon it as well. Some of the best stories I have are the stories where you get started with somebody early on and you stay with them through the tough times till they really hit it, and then looking back at their success.
Exactly. No, it really is fun. I really do find it fun.
So, as a startup, what kind of things are really important for somebody to think about as they launch a new product or service, and then certainly the follow up marketing program that accompanies it?
I think that something that I see quite often with companies when they're in the early stages, when they're about to launch, which is actually kind of surprising because often these companies have already raised, significant amounts of money through venture capital or angels, and they've already got some kind of traction by the time I come in, at least in terms of funding. Sometimes they haven't even really properly validated their product idea. So it's still this kind of pie in the sky and like notion, and they have like an idea and they think that they know who their target market is. And it all sounds very compelling, but they haven't actually properly validated it yet. And I think they think that they have, but they haven't. And I think that that's something that I really try and do before any launch, is just really to make sure that we have spoken to those people that we think are going to buy, that we try and test everything as much as we possibly can before investing time, money, resources into a full kind of launch and marketing strategy. So that's definitely something that I always make sure has been done very thoroughly before we kind of dive into anything else. And then the next thing is definitely the marketing foundations. So again, often I go into companies and sometimes they might have already launched something a bit, but they're not really sure why the marketing isn't working. Often, even with companies that are scaling and they're not sure why they're not scaling fast enough, even when you've had some kind of success, going back to those marketing foundations, the messaging, the positioning, the personas, all of that kind of like structural stuff that you build the strategy on top of, I think it often comes back down to that if something's not working. So just making sure that all of that it's really done in the strongest and most thorough way prior to a launch is that's usually what I go in and focus on first.
That's very insightful. So do you like research?
I absolutely love doing like marketing foundations. That is something that I really enjoy doing because that is the heartbeat of the company. It's the brand. It's how we're going to translate this to the market. So all of that's really exciting for me. I think actually doing the market research, I usually outsource that. So sometimes I'll prepare it all, but I won't actually be the one really executing that most of the time. That's something that I would outsource. It can get a little monotonous, but I love to see the data. That's super exciting. Whenever you get the data back in and we can start like, okay, so these are the words of the people that we need to integrate into that marketing messaging. These are the problems. These are the pain points. This is the dream scenario, getting all of that information straight from the mouth of the ideal customer. That's super exciting. I love those days.
Yeah, same here. Well, tell us about MAXIA Marketing.
So MAXIA is the kind of umbrella under which I consult and kind of sell my services under. I've always been a consultant and done consulting work and worked with many companies at once. Sometimes I am a full house head of marketing as well. But MAXIA was kind of the consolidation of the last decade of work that I've done and the kind of formalization of that work into a company and into an entity that I can start, propelling forward and building more onto.
And where do you see this business going in the future?
So I think where I see MAXIA going is creating a new process where I can make consulting more affordable for the masses, because right now consulting is only for a certain set of companies. I can't work with every single company because I only have certain hours in a day and not everybody can afford me. But I think that the frameworks and processes that I use can be used for most entrepreneurs and most companies because I am industry agnostic and really just focused on those early stages of a company. The step-by-step process that I go through with companies is always quite similar, although the output is always totally different. There's no such thing as like a marketing playbook that you can duplicate for one company to another. Everybody should be totally unique because every business is totally unique. But the process that you can use to get from A to B is very similar from company to company. So I think being able to make that more widely available to more entrepreneurs would be an amazing thing to be able to do at some point. So yeah, hopefully that's where it will end up.
Well, I bet it does. I like your perspective on that. I agree with that. Over the years, we've had opportunities to take a look at marketing products where we really didn't have industry experience. But going back to what you just said, the principles of marketing still apply to that particular business. And again, looking back, that's one of the things I've really enjoyed is learning new businesses, learning new industries, meeting, media people in that industry or consultants, people that know the industry, and you get to know that, and then hopefully mastering that, and then maybe moving on to the next one. So no interest in adding any additional associates or employees at this time?
No, I definitely don't think that I'm going to necessarily go down the agency route. I think I, of course, at some point would love to bring people into the company to maybe work on what I just spoke about. But I think in terms of creating an agency, it's not something that piques my interest at this stage. Maybe that will change. But I'm like a strategist at heart. And I think, I don't necessarily want to become like a branding agency or like an agency in another way. But I'm sure as things move, people will join on. Yes.
Well, I think what'll happen is people will want to join you and you'll be telling them no. But it does change things dramatically. I started kind of on my own and realized that the growth that I wanted to achieve, I couldn't achieve on my own. So then I just started adding people and then subject matter experts in an area of, high growth, whether that was, at the time a designer maybe, or a copywriter, or then a web developer or a digital strategist. Now there's AI and so many different subjects. It's really impossible to be good at everything.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think that I absolutely love having a team. Obviously, even when I work with clients, I'm often in charge of, the hiring roadmap and hiring people. And sometimes I'm managing a team for them, even if it's just, one day a week, I might be the fractional CMO or whatever it is. And I do find that really fun and exciting. But also, as you say, when you start to employ people, I know from when I had my own business, it's a whole nother ball game. And it is, you eventually do become a manager rather than an executor, which is fun in itself. But yeah, I don't think I'm ready to make that leap quite yet.
I understand. And, the fact that you're a strategist, I think is key because strategy is a part of everything. And so by being able to look at it that way, you are able to bring people in when you need them to support the efforts that you do. Why do you think that you choose to focus on startups rather than established brands?
I think because of my own experience, I think that's one of the main reasons, knowing kind of the tropes and the difficulties of being an early stage startup. I can just understand that phase of business really at my core because I've lived it. So I think that that's part of the reason. I find it really exciting when you're in that phase of the business. Things can move really quickly. Whereas, I mean, I have worked at companies who are scaling, and I've taken a company through an acquisition. So I have been at that later stage. But the bigger a company gets and the more successful usually means that there's more red tape. It's more difficult to get initiatives across the line. You can't move as quickly. And I think that that's just part of my personality. I want to get things done quick. I want to see results quickly. And I want to, move as fast as possible. And when you have to get multiple stakeholders to sign off on things, it can just become a little less fast. So for me, that's a little less exciting.
I understand. Well, and I think moving quickly makes a lot of sense for a startup because, otherwise you could waste a lot of resources just getting up to speed.
Exactly. Yeah.
For someone out in our audience that's listening and either just starting up something or they're thinking about it, what are some common mistakes that startups make that you've seen from your background?
As mentioned earlier, I think making sure that you've really validated, and that could be something as easy as, creating a quiz and putting it out to whoever you think your target market is, going into, Reddit forums, or putting it just to your own followers on Instagram, Facebook. Keep it simple. You don't need to do anything complex. You don't need to spend a bunch of money, but really don't kid yourself. Don't think, oh no, but I know that people want this because my mum says she wants it. That's not data. That's not real. You need to make sure that you're getting some real results and some real feedback from whoever you think your ideal customer is. I also think that talking to people, so not just quantitative, but also that qualitative data, jump on a call with your friend who fits your ideal customer profile. Reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and ask them for a quick call. People really do want to help. And I think it doesn't take too much time or effort, but it can have a significant impact on the direction of your business. Even if, let's say, you're starting a company and you think that this is your ideal customer, maybe there's just one comment from somebody that makes you shift in a slightly different direction, a tiny adjustment to your niche, and that just makes your company blow up. Like, you don't know what insight you're going to get that could really help steer those beginning stages where you don't have a lot of resources, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of money, and every moment counts. So I think that that's definitely something that I see people kind of skip over. And then also, as I mentioned, really taking the time to make sure that your marketing foundations are in place. And the last thing, which I think is the hardest thing, and the thing which I even still struggle with, is prioritization. I think every entrepreneur is probably instinctively a doer and has a lot of great ideas. And this is great, but you also need to rein it in, because what can end up happening is that you spread yourself way too thin. You end up trying every single social media channel, every single marketing tactic, because you have fear of missing out and you think, oh, but that person's doing really well there and that person's doing really well there. But in actuality, you need to be very selective at the beginning. Less is more. Be as specific as possible. Hone your focus. Do one or two things that really work and build from there, because that's the only way you're going to have sustainable growth. Otherwise, you're going to be disjointed. You're going to be having a couple percent there, a couple percent there, a couple percent there. And you just need to put all of your energy, time, and thoughts into a couple of areas. So yeah, those would be my three main things.
I think that's great advice. And I don't know that ever goes away. Spreading yourself too thin. I know we work with variety of different kind of companies, but established brands that many times they're wanting to do lots of different things. Oh, what's the latest new social channel? And I think, again, you need to do what you do well and do that before you think about adding something else that may or may not even work, because nobody has unlimited resources. Everybody needs to prioritize and focus on those things that can really move the needle for them.
Yeah, and I think that there's also a balance because, of course, you need to make sure that maybe there's like a big news story that you want to jump on, or there's something that's just entered the zeitgeist that, aligns perfectly with your brand, etc. And I think there's this balance of making sure that you do jump on trends in a way, but also making sure that you're focused at the same time. And it is that constant balance of making sure that you're up to date, but also making sure that you don't run in a million different directions.
I want to get back to the trends thing here in a second, but you mentioned, I don't know that you used the word results, but you referenced results. How do you go into an engagement where you can sort of prove your value, prove what it is that you're doing? How do you set the benchmarks? How do you set the goals for where you're going to take a marketing program?
I think it always starts with like the wider business objectives. So I'll start with, talking to the founders, what are the goals of this company right now? Do you have a financial kind of runway so that we can focus on this? Or do we need to start generating revenue right now, today? Are you focused on a fundraising round? Are you focused on kind of maybe they've already got a bunch of customers and they're focused specifically on retention they want to improve, or they want to focus on acquisition, or, I think that it totally depends company to company, where they're at, what their focus is, what they've done so far. So that's really the first thing that I do. And then from there, we'll kind of discuss and decide what my kind of North Star KPI is going to be, and then what the KPIs around that are going to be to feed into that top number. But obviously, most of the time, it's revenue that people want, to put it simply. But it does vary depending on the company, depending the stage, and depending on the wider business objectives. So yeah, that's where I'll usually focus at the start.
That makes sense. So what's a typical engagement look like for you and a client? How does that get started and how does it develop?
I have some connections with some venture capital firms, so sometimes they might reach out to me. And so let's use that as an example. They'll say, this company's just raised 3 million in seed money, and they're looking to kind of get some structure in place around their marketing. Can you go in and help them? And then I'll kind of go in, we'll figure out how much time they need from me. Sometimes I'll end up being in-house head of marketing for a year or two. Sometimes it will be 1 day a week. And we know that they don't need somebody senior right now. They just need somebody who's maybe a marketing manager, someone who knows their stuff, but somebody who's just going to deliver a lot of output. And I can be that strategic kind of person to bounce things off of, but we have somebody else to kind of execute and implement. That's often how it works. I'll come in more as as an advisor kind of position, and kind of spend maybe a day a week or a day a month with the company and make sure that they're being steered in the right direction.
That's your preference?
Yes, I do love doing that. I think also often, if they're an early stage company, I might do more time for the first few months while they're getting off the ground, and then it will reduce to then just a day a month, or even sometimes it will just go down to a few hours every month. And yeah, I find it really fun to get everything in place and then to kind of let it free and see it blossom, and just have those checkup calls. But I love the bird's eye view and watching that kind of roll out.
Once you launch a marketing program, do you typically like to stay involved over a long period of time, or after you get it up and going, are you kind of ready to move on to the next adventure?
I think it depends on the company. It depends how they decide to build out the team. So if I know, for instance, that they only have that one marketing manager, I love to stay involved. However, if they're really building out the team and there's a bunch of people that are working there all day, all night, and I just come in once a month, then it's less fun because I don't have all the context and everybody else does. And then it's a little more difficult to know what the right direction is if you're a little bit out of the loop on the wider business. I honestly enjoy it both ways. I'm always really happy when I stay involved, but I'm also happy to kind of, let it free and see what happens.
You mentioned trends earlier. What kind of marketing trends are you seeing from your more global view?
We all know, obviously, how AI has changed how marketing's done. I think that there's some amazing MarTech tools coming out that people are taking advantage of more and more. And that's really exciting to me. I worked in AI before the kind of big burst of ChatGPT. And it's really exciting to see how many people have adopted it and how much it has helped the marketing sphere. So I think that's definitely something. Marketing tech has just gone through the roof, and there's so many more amazing things that can be done now with personalization and just data analysis. And there's a bunch of really cool things happening in that space. But I think that also, I mean, AI has affected this, but it was already changing quite significantly again before the burst of ChatGPT. But the way that content marketing has changed. And I find that really exciting. I think it kind of went from pre-ChatGPT that you were the best at content marketing if you just did a lot of it. But now that you can do an unlimited amount of it, it's become much more about quality. And that's really cool to see. Just the quality of content that's coming out of companies at the moment is amazing. And this focus on real resources that people can use, whether that is a quiz, a guide, a template, a worksheet. I think that's been really fun to see, the innovation in content marketing. And that's definitely something that I'm really trying to drive home with companies that I'm working with who are still maybe stuck in, oh, but we should just write blogs. Blogs is like the thin end of the wedge at this point. We need to be doing resources. We need to be driving pure value for that end reader, that end user through content. And that's been really fun. A fun kind of change. I don't know if you could call it a trend, but.
Well, I think it is because there's just more and more technology and more tools, and technology is driving marketing today. There's no question about it. You have a couple of tools that you would suggest specifically by name that you have found very beneficial?
Yeah, Amplitude is amazing once you get the hang of how to use it. That's like a customer data tool. It's so intricate, and the questions that you can ask it are amazing. So that's definitely something that I love to use. And also Pocus. I want to say it's called Pocus. It's basically a customer success or a sales recording program. So when we're on a call right now, for instance, on Zoom, it would be recording and it would be transcribing everything. And then again, you can go in and just search something like how many customers mentioned price during their first sales call. And it will come up with, 55%. How many people said price and expensive in the call? And you can literally search by words and see what the customers are saying, why the customers are churning, why they're not buying, why they're not upgrading, why they're downgrading. And I think it's just so cool. I love that program, and it just gives us so much information about the direction that we need to go in with the marketing, with the retention strategies, with the sales materials, etc.
I'm excited to check those out. We use our podcast as cornerstone content for our marketing program. What's your perspective on podcasts as a part of a marketing program today?
I think that it's really great. When I speak to companies about doing a podcast, I've had some founders come to me and they say, we want to do a podcast. We're going to get so much top of funnel traffic from this, and it's going to be acquisition, and we're going to blow up and we're going to have 50 million listeners. That's what they think a podcast is kind of for and what they think is possible. And I say, okay, hold on. What I see a podcast for, at least for early stage startups, is actually that authority building, the trust building. And it's really more kind of middle to bottom of funnel. It's so hard for podcasts to stand out. Of course you do. Of course, eventually you're going to have a huge following, I hope, and all of that good stuff happens. And yes, maybe it will be a top of funnel activity at some point down the road. But I think that's kind of a longer term goal. Whereas where I think the true value is in podcasts is that trust building, is that authority building. And it's that so customers can get to know you, the founders, your process, how you work more intricately, and yeah, get kind of converted. So that's kind of how I view using a podcast in your marketing strategy.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. In addition to that, and sometimes you don't have the resources to do this, but to be able to take that podcast then and kind of slice and dice it into smaller little snippets, whether they be video snippets or audio or social media posts or whatever, to be able to take that cornerstone content and be able to spread it out, you really leverage the resources that you put into that podcast.
Yeah, you're totally right. That's definitely another huge win with doing a podcast.
Well, let's see. We've talked about lots of different things. You know, you're a young marketer, right? Even though you have years of experience. When we were talking before the show, we talked about how you've always had social media as a part of your at least adolescent life and adult life. What can marketers learn from digital natives?
I think that there's a language and there's a specific kind of zeitgeist that, for instance, with some direct consumer brands that I've worked with, we just know that we have to have a Gen Z doing the TikTok. We just know that because they live on it. They understand the trends, they understand the cadence, they understand how to talk to the camera in a specific way, they understand what it needs to look like, they have a certain eye. And that's very difficult to know unless you live on the platform. I think like my platforms are, right now, it's mainly Instagram. That's where I spend most of my kind of leisure time when I'm on social media. Obviously, I work across a variety of social medias with clients, but that's probably the one which I feel like I'm a real native on. I was on it since, I don't know exactly the year that it came out, but I'm sure I was within the first couple of years of it coming out. I've been on it for, I don't know, at least 12 years. And I spend time on it. So I understand what content needs to look like for that. But I think, yeah, it really is about living, breathing, being on it, understanding what those trends are, understanding the medium, because it is a very specific medium and it evolves and changes all the time. So, yeah.
That's great insight. You know, I've been very impressed with how you've responded to our discussion today. Typically, in a podcast interview like this, we have questions that you're gonna get, right? But there's always those things that pop into my mind and to yours too that you want to talk about because they're relevant. And you're kind of digging in a little bit, and you've really had some great answers. You know, how do people find you? How do you market your business? If somebody wanted to do business with you, how are they going to find you?
So I mentioned before the podcast, but I'm extremely lucky that pretty much all of my work has always come through word of mouth. So I've never had to do any deliberate marketing for myself, which is so interesting considering my job. But I do think word of mouth is one of the absolute strongest forms of marketing that there is out there. And it's very difficult to measure it and to know whether or not you're cultivating that. But I've worked with some companies where they have done, and it's incredible. So in my little way, that's my main marketing strategy. Having said that, I'm definitely trying to formalize a little more. Now I have a website. I never even had a website before. So that's probably the best way to get me. It's maxiamarketing.com.
Or catch you on the podcast circuit, right?
Exactly.
Well, I've really enjoyed visiting with you today. I think we've provided a lot of insight for marketers out there. What else would you like to share with our OutDrive audience that you think they might find interesting or maybe even inspiring?
I think that I will reiterate something that I said earlier, which is if you have a company, if you want to start a company, if you're entrepreneurial in any sense and you want to make a living out of it, focus. Start small. Start with one channel, one marketing channel. Start with 2 marketing channels. Get really specific about what you want, about who your audience is. Speak to those customers. And just remember, just getting, one customer at a time. To eat an elephant, you have to eat it one bite at a time. And I love that saying because with entrepreneurship and with marketing, it's so true. I think it's so easy to feel overwhelmed, to not know where to start, to feel like you have to do everything. And I just want to remind people that you don't have to do everything. Just do one thing at a time.
Hearing that, I can tell that you've been there.
Yes.
You can relate to these companies that you're marketing to, and that makes your services so valuable. Hey, Lilly, I very much appreciate you being on Outdrive.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Folks, thanks for listening to Outdrive. I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Lilly Garrett, founder of MAXIA Marketing. If you liked our podcast, go to your favorite podcast platform and give us a rating and review. We always like that. Maybe that'll bring some new customers along and hopefully new listeners as well. So come back again next week and I'll take you down the roads of rural America where it's heaven on earth.
Thanks for taking a ride with us on Outdrive. This episode is complete, so head on over to ecallis.com for more insight you can apply to help drive your business growth. And be sure to sign up for our free monthly e-letter, Outthink, for even more helpful content about marketing to rural America. Have a great day and keep on driving.